Thanks for clicking on to the slightly later edition of Vogan's European Outlook for Wednesday, the 28th of December. And looking at the ECMWF, this is the 2 meter temperature anomalies for the Northern Hemisphere. So looking down over the pole, and this is for Hogmanay, by the way. We've got a very, very warm North America and indeed Europe here. A bit of a blowtorch, actually, and could be one of the warmest New Year Eves on record for parts of the eastern United States and indeed parts of Europe, as we've got a positive Arctic oscillation, positive North Atlantic oscillation. This does, I want to emphasize this, does coincide with the forecast that I did have out. It stated that if we don't have a sudden stratospheric warming during the month of December, we could have a fairly mild period, Christmas into the new year, and even into the month of January. If you look at what I've written for the month of January, I do actually have, and it's highlighted here, January 2023, average to above average temperatures over northwest Europe, including the UK and Ireland, colder to the south and east of Europe. Why would that be the case? Why do I think that? And that was away back at the beginning of December. The reason why I think it is because I believe that the Mann-Julian oscillation, the Pacific North Atlantic pattern, we've also got the EPO Eastern Pacific Oscillation and the WPO Western Pacific Oscillation. I do believe that they are some of the drivers, the main primary drivers to the Northern Hemisphere winter this year, and there would be back and forths. The overall 90-day period, I did always believe that in my winter forecast that we could end up slightly above average temperature wise for the entire 90-day winter period. So that's from the beginning of December to the end of February, that we would have potentially a significant period of mild, quite extensive mild at that, from about, say, week 3 of December right the way through week 2 of January. And the pattern is very reflective of that. The reason why I believe that the cold pattern that we could and did see during the month of December breaking is because the Mann-Julian oscillation is not going to stick in favourable phases for a prolonged period of time. It's going to rotate, it's going to progress. And of course, as you increase the convection in a certain portion of the equatorial latitudes, so i.e. if you've got the enhanced convection over the Indian Ocean, for example, that can tend to have a downstream impact up across the northern hemisphere of milder conditions, more low level, lower pressure over the Arctic region, higher pressure in the mid latitudes, and therefore a stronger jet stream. And we've got that at the moment with a very powerful jet stream across the Pacific. It's not only bringing a deluge to the west coast of North America, but it's also flooding the continent with Pacific air. We're seeing that reflected in the Atlantic as well. We've got a strong Atlantic jet stream. That is going to be the driver through the first 10 days of January at least, that we're going to see the Atlantic in the driving seat. That doesn't mean, however, particularly so across northern Britain, that we will see episodes of colder conditions. Now, we've had snow around here for quite a while, even though we're in a mild pattern. Of course, you tend to get that, especially if the jet stream's crossing over the British Isles, or at the moment it's further south, so we're seeing these areas of low pressure coming in from the south. So therefore, you're always a bit closer to that colder air coming in on the north side of the low and wrapping around the back side of these circulations. You tend to have more cold air. So it's slushy at the moment. Temperatures have been warming through the day here across the north of Scotland, mild across the south, so there's really no winter to speak about. And I think over the next few days we're going to have more snow, particularly across high ground of Scotland here. So I think the run up to the new year actually could be a little bit colder across the north. But the Mann-Julian oscillation progressing through phases 6 into 7 into 8 and then into 1, that is conducive for colder pattern, more blocked patterns across the northern hemisphere, and that brought the coldest September, the coldest second half to September since 2012, and that was information provided by Gav's WeatherVids. We've seen the pattern repeat itself during November, but we've seen North America see the cold, Europe didn't see the cold, and now it's interesting how in the month of December, Europe turned very cold first while North America stayed warm. Now we're seeing North America staying cold, Europe warming up. The question I've got is, do we see the pattern and the Magellan Oscillation repeat itself during the month of January? Up until now, the stratospheric polar vortex has not been in the game at all. It's not been part of any kind of cold that we've seen. Remember, December will wind up below average despite the mild that we've got at the moment. And it will, of course, be the coldest December in a while. It's also the coldest coldest month compared to average in the British Isles for the entire 2022 calendar year. So very interesting stuff. But the Magellan Oscillation, according to the GFS and indeed the ECMWF, is taking it back into phases 7, 8, and then possibly 1. Now, the ECMWF a little bit more prominent, has a little bit more amplitude to this versus the GFS, which is this graphic here. So I'm watching this carefully, and I believe that we could see this repeat itself. But of course, as the winter progresses, things change, the dynamics change. The drivers that produce cold during the early portion of the winter doesn't often necessarily mean that we get that later down the road. The parameters do change. The Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation is positive at this moment. The GFS ensemble trends it back towards neutral. As for the Arctic Oscillation, it is neutral and trending back negative once again. And we'll have to keep an eye on that, of course. But certainly, like I say, the stratosphere not in the game at the moment here. We've got a strong, robust, cold polar vortex centered almost bang slap over the Arctic region. And this is reflective, by the way, right the way down through the troposphere as well. And that therefore we've got the strong jet stream winds. We've got mild conditions through the mid-latitude pattern. All the cold is largely bottled up across the top. But as we skip through the loop, you can see what happens as we progress through week 1 into week 2. We still have that strong warming taking place from Siberia towards the pole, pushing the vortex towards North America and towards Europe. My concern, however, is like 2014, where we've seen part of the polar vortex drop into North America, but in turn that strengthened the Atlantic jet stream. The UK was bombarded by one low pressure after another. It was wild and it was stormy. It's also cold across the northern half of the British Isles, not so across the southern half of the British Isles. So that is on the table as well, but we will keep an eye on this stratospheric situation at the moment. Nothing is written in stone. Doesn't guarantee that we're going to see a sudden stratospheric warming, but certainly it's interesting that the modelling is still showing this scenario. But as we go, this is January 1st. We've got very warm across Europe. Notice the UK and Ireland. We've got colder across the north of the British Isles and Ireland as the jet stream comes in on a southern track. So the northern half of the British Isles remains on the cold side of the jet stream. North America, very, very mild compared to normal, as you can see here. Let's have a look at Europe and see what it's shown here. So let's get to the right chart. We'll play through the loop here, and you can see very mild compared to average across most of the continent. And of course, with the areas of low pressure tracking kind of from a west-southwest to east-northeast direction, most of the northern half of the British Isles, including parts of Ireland, stays on that colder side. So therefore, we've got a little bit more of an increased chance of seeing snowfall, for example. But look at the central portion of Europe. Very, very warm compared to average. 16 above average on the 1st of January. Look at Western Scotland. That's quite interesting to see, isn't it? So, wow. What a blowtorch for not just North America, but also for Europe during the New Year period. Let's have a look at the snowfall prospects here. And we can have a look and see quite the snowpack notice out here across the northern half of the British Isles. So, yeah, it could be one of the warmest New Years on record for Europe, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to have snow on the ground in Glasgow on the same day. So, that's quite interesting, of course. With the warmth comes a lack of snow cover across Europe, if you notice here. So that's another interesting aspect to look at. Looking at the CFS-V2, this is the upcoming 7-day period. Big strong ridge over the eastern half of North America, pumping the warmth. We've got a big ridge over Europe. We've got a big negative representative of a classic positive Arctic North Atlantic Oscillation, across Iceland here. So we're just sending one system after the other, but containing some cold, which keeps the northern half of the UK a little bit more seasonable. As we go into week 2, it's quite interesting to see the differences taking place here. So we're starting to raise the heights across the northern half of North America. Still got that deep low across the North Pacific here, which would emphasize that we're still driving in Pacific air across North America. But as we go into week 3, you notice here that the CFS-V2 is indicating a bit more ridging up across northern portions of the North American continent. Therefore, we're starting to see a trough developing over the southeast. Also notice here across Europe that we're starting to see a buildup of pressure over Scandinavia. So with the Mann-Julian Oscillation possibly rotating in the favourable phases, also keeping an eye on the scenario with regards to the stratosphere and the warming that we're seeing from Siberia towards the pole. There is a lot of things to consider when it comes to the month of January. And remember what I've said. I believe that the January scenario is possibly going to wind up warmer than average across most of Europe. Even if we do get a cold spell, does the warm outweigh any cold that does arrive? That's something that needs to be considered here for the month of January here. So certainly a lot of things of interest. Let's have a very quick look at the overview chart here of the GFS or the ECMWF for the next few days here. Remember, there's some pretty deep, beefy areas of low pressure moving in as well. So there you go here. So this is Friday the 30th, day before New Year's Eve. Snow across southern, central, and northern Scotland. As you can see, we've got milder conditions across the southwest. A lot of rainfall, a lot of rain over the next several days here, but we could see some significant snow, by the way, across the Highlands in the run-up to the new year. So that system moves out. Then as we progress through Friday and into Saturday, a little bit of a colder push coming in from the north. These areas of low pressure tracking that little bit further south, if you notice here. So therefore the colder air is in place. This is New Year's Eve. Bit of a space in the isobars, a little bit of a break in the weather. With snow on the ground, you can see some pretty darn cold nights as well, by the way. Clear skies, light winds, and snow cover. Could see the temperatures down in the double digits below freezing, for example. That isn't out of the question either. So we could see quite the significant contrast between the north and the south over the British Isles during Hogmanay into the new year. And of course, we've got likely record-breaking warmth across the continent on that new year period as well. So lots of things going on. So I certainly do encourage you to keep it right here on my YouTube channel. I do appreciate every view, every comment, every new sub. And I notice here I'm closing in on 4,000 subscribers. I think it was actually only December last year that I was sitting on 1,000 subscribers. So the channel has grown massively over the last 12 months. And I just want to appreciate and say my appreciation for all your support and encouragement over that 12-month period. I couldn't have done it without yous. And if you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button. Help me get to 4,000 subscriptions shortly. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll hopefully be back again tomorrow with more. Stay tuned. See you again tomorrow. Bye for now.